The boardroom fell silent as every face slowly turned toward me, their expressions filled with pity and discomfort while my presentation froze on the giant screen behind me. 3 years of research stood there in glowing charts and data. The breakthrough that was supposed to change my life forever. "Sorry to interrupt, Veda," Breille said with a polished smile that carried no kindness at all as she walked confidently to the front of the room. Her expensive cream suit and arrogant posture made it clear she believed the company already belonged to her. The investors who had been praising my work moments earlier immediately shifted their attention toward her while I stood frozen beside the projector. Breille clicked her remote, minimized my slides, and announced that the company had found a better and more profitable direction. Please subscribe and share our channel, because we create powerful story videos made especially for you. Hey music, stay connected with our channel and keep watching amazing emotional stories that will surprise and inspire you every time. Breille's presentation looked painfully familiar, because every major idea on those slides had come directly from my private research, notes, and late-night lab discussions. Music, she spoke confidently about concepts she barely understood while the room applauded her like she was a genius. I packed my laptop quietly, while the investors discussed millions of dollars in funding around the same table where my future had just been stolen. Nobody noticed when I removed my company keycard and placed it beside my empty coffee cup. Ellis, Music, the CEO who once promised I would become the future of his company. Our music nod didn't even try to stop me from leaving the room. He simply looked away while his daughter accepted praise built entirely on my hard work and sacrifice. The moment I reached my car, my hands began shaking uncontrollably as reality crashed over me like a wave. 3 years of sleepless nights, experiments, music, and failures had just been handed to someone else in less than 10 minutes. My name is Veda, and unlike most innovators in the biotech industry, I didn't come from wealth or elite universities. I grew up watching my mother clean houses while I studied at borrowed tables and fought for every opportunity I ever received. I worked endless nights during college, balancing waitressing jobs with research projects that never carried my name. Even back then, I learned that talented people are often invisible until someone powerful decides to use them. Ellis hired me 4 years earlier after claiming he admired my unusual way of solving scientific problems. For the first time in my life, I believed someone truly saw my potential instead of my background. I spent the next 3 years developing a stabilization process that could completely transform targeted medicine delivery. It wasn't just another project to me, because it represented every sacrifice I had ever made to succeed. Then Breille arrived 8 months earlier with a fancy business degree and a leadership title nobody understood. Ellis introduced her proudly to the staff, while acting like she already deserved authority she had never earned. At first I trusted her because she seemed genuinely curious about my work and constantly praised my intelligence. She asked detailed questions about my methods, my results, and even my private lab notebooks. One evening, she leaned against my workstation and smiled before saying, "You're brilliant, Veda, Music, but you don't understand how this industry works." At the time I thought it was advice, but later I realized it was a warning. 3 days before the investor presentation, Breille suddenly became obsessed with reviewing every detail of my latest experiments. She insisted she wanted to help prepare the commercial side, while secretly studying how to take control of everything. When I reached my apartment after the humiliating meeting, my cat Newton rubbed against my legs as if sensing my heartbreak. I sat on the floor holding him tightly while trying to understand how betrayal could hurt this deeply. My phone filled with messages from coworkers, asking what had happened inside the boardroom and why everyone looked terrified afterward. Before I could answer, another message arrived directly from Ellis, and Music Martin demanding that I return immediately. Instead of replying, I opened my laptop and focused on the backup plans I had quietly prepared weeks earlier. Deep down, I had already sensed Breille and Ellis were positioning themselves to steal my work. The next morning, tension filled the entire lab the moment I walked through the doors carrying a small box for my belongings. Conversation stopped instantly, while employees stared at me like they were waiting for an explosion. Ellis stormed out of his office and ordered me inside with anger burning across his face. The second the door closed, he demanded to know why the stabilization process suddenly stopped working overnight. I calmly reminded him that according to Breille's presentation, my ideas were no longer important to the company. His confidence began collapsing when he realized the system depended on knowledge Breille had never actually learned. Breille rushed into the office moments later, looking pale and panicked as she admitted the scientists could not reproduce the results. For the first time since she arrived, Music made her polished confidence completely disappeared. Ellis offered promotions, bonuses, and anything else I wanted if I fixed the crisis before the investors arrived. I simply smiled and explained that science required understanding, not stolen slides and rehearsed speeches. Music, As I walked through the lab toward the exit, whispers spread behind me like wildfire among the employees. Everyone finally understood the terrifying truth that Breille never created the breakthrough she claimed belonged to her. Outside the building, I sat in my car and watched expensive investor vehicles arrive one after another. None of them knew they were walking into a disaster that would destroy Ellis's company within hours. The music went shortly afterward. One of the lead investors, named Kieran, called and urgently asked to meet me at a coffee shop across the street. His controlled voice could not hide the panic growing behind his words. During our meeting, Kieran admitted the investors were prepared to invest $80 million before the lab suddenly failed. I calmly explained that trusting presentations without understanding the actual science was always dangerous. I handed him a card with only a phone number written on it and invited the investors to see the real innovation later that afternoon. The look in his eyes changed instantly because he finally understood who truly controlled the future of the project. That evening, I presented my real research to the investors, inside a private conference room far away from Ellis and Breille. For the first time, my work was being judged by people who actually listened to me instead of using me. I revealed that I had secretly formed my own company named Solara Therapeutics several weeks earlier after realizing my research was no longer safe. Every critical experiment had been carefully documented using my own resources, outside company property. The investors were stunned when I showed proof that Breille had repeatedly searched through my workstation after hours. Music, security footage, and legal records confirmed that I had been protecting myself long before the betrayal became public. By the next morning, rumors, music spread across the industry while Ellis's company began collapsing under pressure and legal scrutiny. Investors withdrew funding, employees resigned, music, and the board quietly removed Breille from her position. A few days later, the music from Breille unexpectedly visited my small laboratory looking exhausted and emotionally broken. She admitted that everything in her life had fallen apart and asked how I knew their plan would fail. I told her the answer was simple because while she spent months studying my notes, I spent months studying people. I understood that shortcuts and stolen credit could impress a room briefly, but they could never replace genuine knowledge. 48 hours after Breille stole my presentation, my entire future changed in ways none of them expected. The greatest revenge was never destroying Ellis or humiliating Breille. It was proving I never needed them to succeed in the first place.